Hey guys, so welcome back for another time lapse. This week it's going to be a watercolor illustration, and this one was really fun and I really enjoyed it because I was actually making it as a wedding present for one of my best friends in the whole wide world, and it was so much fun giving it to her, and I just wish her and her husband the best possible life ahead of them. So that was really exciting, and it was fun to work on this piece because it was kind of personal. So what I'm going to talk mostly about today is digital art versus traditional, or in this case particularly watercolor, and what I like about the two different mediums, why I like using one versus the other. I would say that I like using one more than the other, but I don't really know if I do prefer one to the other. It's just at different times I might be in a different mood and I want to work on a watercolor versus a digital piece. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. This piece I learned a lot from, and it was really cool because before I did the watercolor, I sketched the base sketch for this illustration on my iPad, which is what I do for most of my watercolor illustrations, and then I print it out and I transfer it and watercolor it. Because this one was a little bit more complicated than most of the watercolors I've done in the past and what I'm used to doing, I decided that it would be a good idea to do a color study on my iPad. So I used some watery kind of brushes in Procreate and basically did a color map for the illustration, and I went ahead and picked out the colors and really sort of did a rough digital version of this illustration before I printed it out and did the watercolor version. So if you want to check out the test, the color map of this illustration, then check out my Instagram page, because the post for this watercolor piece will also have the color sketch, if you will, for this piece. And so I'm really excited about finding that technique, because it definitely made a lot of the pressure sort of on picking the right colors when you're laying down the watercolor go away, because I already knew what I wanted, how I wanted it to turn out, what colors I wanted to use, and I was really only following the reference of having the digital sketch in front of me. And so I did have my computer pulled up and I was going back and looking at it sort of for side by sides of what color was supposed to go where and how I wanted it to ultimately look. There were a few things I changed from the digital sketch to the final illustration, but they were very minor things, and they were things that just helped to add a little more life once I got into the watercolor illustration. So that was something that was very fun to learn, and it brings me to one of the things I love most about digital illustration. It's fast, or at least it can be. I mean, I know you can get very easily bogged down in detail because you can zoom and you can try different layers and you can go back and forth. Whereas with watercolor, once you put down layers, you're more or less, stuck with those layers and what you've put down, and you just have to go forward. There's very little going back. There is no Control Z with watercolor, which can be a little intimidating, but for me it's also very freeing, because then I know, okay, well, because of the fast nature of watercolors and because there is no undo button, this illustration is only going to take me so long. I really do like how fast I can get watercolors done, simply because you almost have to get them done fast in order for the colors to work right. And so I very much like sort of the finality of traditional illustration. Anytime I work in pen and ink, which I haven't done a lot since college, but I always kind of enjoy how the marks are permanent. And yes, you have to think a little bit more deliberately about where you're putting them, but at the same time, there's no point fretting over putting them in the wrong place because it's stuck. It's there. You can't do anything about it. And I really do like that because it keeps you from waffling too much and going back and forth on your decisions. Once you've made a decision, you're stuck with the decision and you just have to move forward. Whereas digital, you can go back and forth and you can try, 50 different variations of something and still be undecided on what you ultimately want to go with for your final product. And so for digital, it's sort of a two-edged sword. You have the undo button and then you have the undo button, and that kind of creates a whole new set of problems. But I do love how easy it is to layer, how easy it is to edit things. There's a reason I do the sketches for my watercolor pieces on my iPad. It's so that I can work out all of the placement, all of the creative problem-solving pieces of the composition on an easy platform where I can just select something I want to move and adjust the size, adjust the position. I can just move everything around to my heart's content until I find where I want it to be. And I do very much enjoy that. Erasing is so frustrating to me when you have something, like let's say you've drawn the perfect hand, or you've drawn the face and the eyes with the perfect expression, and it just perfectly captures what a character is feeling and thinking in the moment, but you realize, oh, well, those eyes are too far apart, or they're too close together, or they're not properly lined up, and I'm gonna have to redraw it so that it looks proper. And yet at the same time, you kind of have that fear that, oh, if I redraw it, I'm not going to get that utterly perfect expression back. And what I love with digital art is you can just select it using the selection tool and zoom and adjust, and if you end up making it worse, then you can undo and then restart again. And I just like the freedom that has. So there are pros and cons to both. I do think it's great to have a foundation in traditional art because it helps you understand more about color mixing, about why things are done and how things work, that when you're working in pixels and raster images or vector images, either one, it just may not have quite the same feel and quite the same process. You can try to fix things with layers and with effects, but if you don't know the basics, then it's just not going to come out how you're looking, what you're looking for it to come out like. And so yeah, I think there are pros and cons to each. I like going back and forth. I like being both a traditional artist and a digital artist, and having the freedom to include both in my work and include both in my portfolio. And I highly encourage people to not just stick with one or the other, but to explore digital and traditional art and find what they enjoy and find ways to make them mesh. You can still have a style that can cross mediums, and so I think that's really the best thing to aim for. But I respect both traditional, digital. It's all art, it's all cool. So yeah, that was me rambling for this week. If you have any topic suggestions, please let me know. I am happy to hear all of them. So yeah, thank y'all very much.